Hello and welcome to World Mycotoxin Report Impact 2019, a webinar hosted by BIOMIN and Romer Labs. Both companies are part of the EVA group, and we're broadcasting live from our world headquarters here in Austria. My name is Joshua Davis, and I am the Communications Manager at Romer Labs. Joining me are Alexandro Marchioro, Senior Mycotoxin Expert at BIOMIN. Hi.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning to you. How are you doing?
Fine, and you?
Doing fantastic. Glad to be here. And sitting here to my right is Martina Bellasio, Senior Mycotoxin Expert at Romer Labs and Product Manager. Hi.
Hi.
Good morning. How are you doing?
Great, thanks.
Good. Well, I know that all of you out there are eager to hear the results from the BIOMIN World Mycotoxin Report, but first, a few words to our audience. I just want to remind you that this is an interactive webinar. When you open the toolbar on the right-hand side of your screen, you'll find a chat function for issues regarding audio, visual, or other technical settings within the webinar platform. The questions function can be used at any time throughout the session, so please feel free to enter questions for our speakers and for the Q&A session later on. In addition, you, the audience, can also vote in several polls throughout today's session. So when I announce a poll question, you'll have the opportunity to provide your input in real time, and then I'll announce the aggregate results. So without further ado, let's start with our first poll question, just to get us into the topic a little bit. First poll question: have you found mycotoxins in your raw material or finished feed in the past 12 months? Yes, no, or you're not sure. So while our audience members select their answer, Alexandro, would you remind us of the relevance of mycotoxins to feed and farm animals?
Yes, this is a good point. There is a quite broad spectrum of factors caused by mycotoxins. What is really important to know is that all mycotoxins, even at the low concentration, can cause important losses. Especially in the last 5-10 years, a lot of studies were published showing the negative effects of mycotoxins on the gastrointestinal tract. So this can be the starting point for several intestinal diseases. Moreover, they can also be toxic to liver, impair reproduction, for example, and in the case of high contamination, cause neurotoxicity and carcinogenicity. And all of these effects will decrease, of course, the animal performance, and it will be directly reflected in economic losses for the livestock industry. So this costs billions of dollars each year.
All right, thank you. The voting is closed. Thank you for all of you who participated. And looking at the results, it seems that 72% of you are saying that you have found mycotoxins in your raw material or finished feed in the past 12 months. 10% of you have not, and the remainder of you are not quite sure. Tell me, Alex, what do you think about these results?
Good, this is not a surprise. At BIOMIN, we have been helping clients cope with mycotoxin challenges for over 25 years. Our research and the animal survey program show that mycotoxins are indeed a common issue in animal feed.
All right. Well, you've brought a preview of this year's BIOMIN mycotoxin survey results. So why don't we have a look at the numbers? Well, BIOMIN's been running this survey every year since 2004. And this year, it looks like you tested about 18.5 thousand samples of finished feed and raw materials sourced from 79 different countries. Tell me, what does the picture look like globally?
Like you said, since 2004, BIOMIN has published this mycotoxin report. It provides the market with a strong tool to manage mycotoxin risk. And it's also important for us because it helps our technical and sales team recommend solutions for mycotoxin caused problem. But now let's have a look on the worldwide contamination. So first of all, I would like to explain how to read this map. In this world map, the subregions of the world are colored according to the percentage of samples above the risk threshold.
Real quick, could you just explain to me, what do you mean by risk threshold?
Good point. The risk thresholds are defined by BIOMIN, with the worldwide practical experience in the field, scientific trials, and according to the literature. So yellow means a moderate risk, up to red representing extreme risk, with more than 75% of the tested sample above the risk threshold. So when we take a look the average contamination level in the worldwide result from 2018, we can see that 62% of feed materials had at least one of the major mycotoxins present, at a level that we know that could affect animal health or performance. And in addition, we can see that all regions are affected by mycotoxin. And for the full detail in this world map, the webinar participants will receive a link to the BIOMIN World Mycotoxin Survey 2018 report in the next 24 hours.
That's right. That's right. We've got lots of goodies coming your way. Today's session is being billed as focusing on the impact of mycotoxins in 2019. According to your analysis, what are the trends in regards to the most prevalent mycotoxins out there?
Well, we can see the trend in the occurrence of fumonisins and DEOXYNIVALENOL in corn on this slide. So the bars represent the prevalence and the line represents the average of contamination in ppb over the last 10 years. So we can see that the co-occurrence of these two mycotoxins is high, and the average of contamination can cause expressive losses on animal production. This is especially true on the most sensitive phase, like reproduction and the starters.
So tell me, could this trend be observed for all regions worldwide?
Yes, we have observed this trend on nearly every continent. And but to explain better what contributes for this mycotoxin occurrence, we need to take care of these parameters especially. So here we have many factors that influence mycotoxin occurrence in general. For example, we know that climate change will decrease yields. Environmental stress has been shown to have significant consequence for fungi growth, especially increasing mycotoxin production. Furthermore, extreme drought episodes like desertification, floods, and fluctuation between wet and dry cycles have an impact on the life cycle of mycotoxin producing fungi. So the weather condition at a certain growing stage, for example, flowering and harvesting, definitely influence mycotoxin occurrence. And to illustrate the impact of weather during the harvesting period on mycotoxin formation, I have brought one example here. So here we are some image of the harvest condition in part of Argentina in 2017 and 2018. There was heavy rainfalls in 2017, causing flooding, and as you can see, the corn was totally submerged. The data about the corn in Argentina during the harvest season show a high risk, especially in fumonisins contamination, as more than two-thirds of samples tested were above the risk threshold and showed average around 3,500 ppb. However, in 2018, Argentina experienced a long dry period. Looking again at the corn data after the last harvest, we could observe a high fumonisins contamination with an average around 4,700 ppb. So we can see the impact on climate and weather condition on the level of mycotoxins.
So you're talking about DEOXYNIVALENOL, you're talking about fumonisins. It seems that we have a lot of different mycotoxins in the mix. Do these occur in similar patterns everywhere, or is there some geographic variation that we need to account for?
Okay, let's go through the data region by region. Yeah.
Right.
We have a separate map for each region that show the sub-region risk. So let's start with Europe. In Europe, the most prevalent mycotoxins are the DEOXYNIVALENOL and FUMONISINS. In corn, 74% of samples tested positive for FUMONISINS. In cereals like wheat, barley, etc., the DEOXYNIVALENOL contamination was high, with 912 ppb on average. And in Southern Europe, 84% of all tested samples were positive for FUM. Moreover, in Central and Northern Europe, the occurrence of the DEOXYNIVALENOL toxin increased in 2018. In Central Europe, the prevalence was at 64%, with an average of 776 ppb. In Northern Europe, showed the similar levels, with a prevalence of 66%, at average of 724 ppb. So these results show us how the mycotoxin contamination can change between the regions, depending especially on the weather and grain production conditions. So now let's discuss how these results threats animals. First of all, I would like to explain how to read the graph on the right side. The gray bar indicate the proportion of samples with each mycotoxin detected on all analysis performed. And the pictures of animals are colored according to the proportion of samples above the risk threshold for each animal species. So DON is one of the main concerns in all species. As in 2017, in 2018, FUM and DON were the greatest mycotoxins of concern. Both of these mycotoxins are frequently found at a level of concern for swine and poultry. For the others mycotoxins, the risk level were quite moderate. So let's go for the America. Starting with North America. We observed a rise in DON contamination in cereals from 65% in 2017 to 86% in 2018, so with an average of 1,800 ppb. FUMONISINS were present in 70% of corn samples analyzed, with a high average of 3,400 ppb. And another important corn subproduct, the GGS, was especially subject to DON contamination. So the prevalence was at 98%, and there was an average contamination of 1,400 ppb. So as we can see, DON and FUM were the highest threats in this region. In addition, we know that these two toxins can work together and to make things even worse for the animals. Going to Central and South America, in these regions, the risk was high. Central America had a risk level of 70%, while South America had a risk level of 72%. So the DEOXYNIVALENOL is present in 88% of cereal samples, and they tended to test at a high average concentration, around 1,900 ppb. Further, a maximum concentration of 8,700 ppb was detected. FUMONISINS is the most abundant mycotoxin in this region. It contaminates 86% of corn, 100% of the GGS, and 89% of finished feed sample. And a concentration as high as 7,000 ppb of FUM was found. So FUM contamination was particularly high in Argentina, owing to the weather condition we showed before. So FUM was high at 4,700 ppb on average. So Central and South America are showing a high risk for all animal species. Again, DON and FUM were occurring at levels high enough to represent a real threat. So going to Asia, in general, Asia has seen a higher risk level this year. In contrast to the other regions, there were other concerns aside from FUMONISINS and DEOXYNIVALENOL. So aflatoxin was present in 44% of all samples tested in this region. Moreover, in South Asia, 87% of samples contained aflatoxin. It occurred mainly in finished feed samples. In China, FUM and DON are very prevalent, particularly in corn. So 96% of corn samples were contaminated with these two mycotoxins. So FUM returned average of 3,400 ppb, while DON levels came back at 540 ppb. Looking for Middle East. In the Middle East, the total threshold risk level is at 60%. In particular, the prevalence of FUMONISINS, DON, and zearalenone is on the rise here. By taking a closer look at corn samples, we can see 100% of prevalence of FUMONISINS with average of 3,100 ppb. So overall, the risk remains high, and this poses a genuine risk to the animal in general. And the last region, Africa. In Africa, we see a high contamination of three mycotoxins: DON at 84%, FUMONISINS at 77%, and zearalenone at 72%. So let's have a look at the result for animal species in Africa. So DON and FUM occur here at the most, but it's important to keep an eye on ZEN levels in some areas. So these overall results include South Africa, and we have to keep in mind that the most sample originate from there. In addition, this region generally doesn't show levels as high as in the other parts of Africa. So we need to consider this. So these are the highlights from the region that we planned to show to you today. Remember, for more details, we will send the full mycotoxin survey in the next 24 hours.
Great, thank you, Alex, for all these insights. You know, the high prevalence of mycotoxin occurrence that we've seen here makes it even more important for feeding grain producers to test for mycotoxins. And this, I think, is where Romer Labs can probably tell us a thing or two. But before I hand it over to Martina, we have another poll question for you. So here we go. Number 2, how many mycotoxins do you test for? 0, 1, 2 to 6, or more than 6? Now, while our listeners are responding to the poll, perhaps you, Martina, can tell us a little bit about Romer Labs. Romer Labs has testing solutions for other analytes, such as pathogens and GMO, but it began as a mycotoxin testing company, didn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. Mycotoxins have been at the heart of Romer Labs since its beginnings in 1982. And we really started out with mycotoxins. And now, with more than 35 years of experience in this field, Romer Labs has the broadest portfolio of mycotoxin testing solutions on the market, and these include on-site testing methods and reference testing methods to be applied in the lab.
All right, thank you. So thank you for your responses. We're closing the poll right now, and let's take a look at the results. 7% of you said you test for 0 mycotoxins, 8% of you test for 1, and the vast majority of you, 60%, test for somewhere between 2 and 6, while 28% of you test for more than 6. So those are some interesting numbers. What do you think about those, Martina?
Yeah, this corresponds to what we know from our customers. On average, there are 6 regulated mycotoxins, so these are the ones that most commonly tested for.
So what are the mycotoxins that people usually test for? Are there others aside from the usual suspects, so to speak, the 6 regulated ones that we need to test for?
Yeah, this is a good question. So here you can see the most commonly tested mycotoxins. The BIOMIN survey has already given us insights onto the incidence of the 6 major mycotoxins in agricultural commodities. And for these 6 well-known toxins, much toxicological data has been collected in the past decades. However, in the last years, the attention of the scientific community has also been focused on other fungal metabolites, and more evidence on their toxic effects has been collected. We generally use the term emerging mycotoxin to underline how these analytes have been gaining awareness in the analytic community. And here you can see just some of the toxic effects of these emerging mycotoxins. They have all been linked to some sort of toxic effects. So petolin and bevaricin, for example, both negatively affect the immune system. Fusaric acid has negative effects on the swine nervous system. Ergot alkaloids are a special class of compounds causing fat necrosis and reproductive dysfunction, while moniliformin is particularly toxic to the heart. Other toxic metabolites that have gained more and more attention in the recent years are the so-called mass mycotoxins. And in the following slides, I would like to tell you a bit more about these toxins. So when fungi infect a plant, they release a wide range of metabolites, including the well-known DEOXYNIVALENOL and zearalenone as part of the natural infection process. Often, the host plant will modify these compounds coming from the fungus. This chemical modification is the so-called mask that hides the true identity of the mycotoxin. And this is why traditionally mycotoxin tests often miss them. So for the plant, the masking represents a detoxification strategy. And usually a glucose molecule or a sulfide group is attached to the fungal metabolites. The problem is that the toxicity to humans and animals will reemerge when the added masking group is cleaved off by the bacteria in the gastrointestinal tract of mammals. This is of particular interest given that novel plant breeds selected to be resistant to mycotoxin-producing fungi often accumulate a higher percentage of the mass mycotoxins compared to the non-resistant variety.
So in addition to the 6 regulated mycotoxins, we have emerging and also masked mycotoxins to worry about as well. What are the effects of multiple mycotoxins in feed?
Well, we have already heard from Alex that agricultural commodities are often contaminated with more than one mycotoxin. And this is, of course, true not only for regulated mycotoxins, but also for emerging and masked mycotoxins. Now, with this slide, I would like to remind you what types of effects we can have when 2 or more mycotoxins are present in the same sample. So in general, there are 3 different types of effects: additive, synergistic, or antagonistic. The toxicological interactions of mycotoxins are typically synergistic. So this means that the effect of 2 or more mycotoxins present in the same sample will be higher than the sum of the effect of the individual mycotoxins. These synergistic effects can vary from animal to animal, and they can be very complex. And in this slide, we can see some example of the synergistic and additive effects in 2 different species. Synergistic effects are indicated with red lines, and additive effects are indicated with dashed lines. And the figure on the left-hand side refers to poultry. So here, for example, FUMONISIN B1 exhibits synergistic effects with fusaric acid, an unregulated mycotoxin, and additive effects with T2 toxin, another regulated mycotoxin. On the right-hand side, we have data for swine, and here, for example, FUMONISIN B1 has synergistic effects with aflatoxin B1 and deoxynivalenol. So far we have seen 2 concepts, mainly that there is an increasing evidence that many fungal metabolites have toxic effects on animals, and that the simultaneous presence of several mycotoxins can exponentially increase the toxicity of a sample. So an obvious question arises: how can we get information on the whole contamination level of a sample if the traditional rapid tests are available only for regulated mycotoxins? Well, analysts are increasing turning toward liquid chromatography, tandem mass spectrometry, as a method for detecting multiple mycotoxins in one sample. In fact, analytical methods based on LC-MS/MS have become a true state-of-the-art approach in the analysis of mycotoxins over the last decade. The advantages of LC-MS/MS include not only the ability to perform multi-mycotoxin analysis, but also its high selectivity and sensitivity, bringing its range of detection down to the PPT range for most mycotoxins.
PPT, does that mean parts per trillion?
Yes, exactly.
Wow.
So here is an example of how the output of an LC-MS/MS analysis looks. The sensitivity and selectivity of the instrument allows us to identify and precisely quantify many different metabolites in just one run. Romer Labs offers the most comprehensive LC-MS/MS multi-mycotoxin analysis commercially available. We call it the MULTI-MYCOTOXIN Analysis 50+. This analysis gives us a unique insight into the contamination pattern of a sample with more than 50 mycotoxins quantified. We have validated this method on wheat, maize, swine feed, and silage. And our method is a key component of the BIOMIN Spectrum Top 50 service. So you might be asking how we chose these mycotoxins to be included in the method. So here are the criteria we applied. Of course, all the regulated mycotoxins were included, together with the emerging and mass mycotoxins for which toxicological data is available. And last but not least, only mycotoxins for which a high-quality analytical standards were available were selected.
All right. Well, thank you, Martina. But this makes me want to ask one question. And Alex, you can feel free to jump in here too. We know that there are over 400 fungal metabolites out there that could be toxic. How do we test for those that don't meet the criteria for the 50+ method offered by Romer Labs and BIOMIN?
Yeah, that's a very good question. In our experience, there are always a few customers who can't get the root of their mycotoxin problem with our Spectrum Top 50. So to get these details, we use a method with the capacity to detect most of these 400 metabolites. So the state-of-art method offered can measure over 3,380 mycotoxin, and of course the secondary metabolites, and we call it Spectrum 380. So have a look at the spectrum result, and we can see that the co-contamination where multiple mycotoxins are present, it's very common. Huh? And the most prevalent mycotoxins, emerging mycotoxins, are molybdenum, belvericin, eniatin, and coumarin. We found these for the most part in wheat, maize, and finished feed. And we also use the Spectrum 380 as part of the BIOMIN survey. And we analyzed 691 samples in 2018 with it. So have a look at the graph on the left. On the x-axis, we have the metabolites per sample. And on the y-axis, we can see the proportion of sample in percent. So most of these samples contain between 20 and 29 metabolites. On average, we detected 34 metabolites per sample. And we also observed that 9.7 out of 10 samples were contaminated with fusarium toxin. And finally, we can also see that 98% of all tested samples were contaminated with more than 10 different toxins and metabolites.
Wow, so many thanks to you, Alex, and to you, Martina, for those insights into multi-mycotoxin analysis. I'd like to take the opportunity to sort of steer our discussion to another relevant issue. Once you have test results in hand and you have identified a contamination issue, you're probably going to want to mitigate the risk to your animals. So with this in mind, let's turn to our audience once again for our final poll question. Over the past 12 months, which mycotoxin mitigation methods have you used? And you can choose more than one here. A mycotoxin binder added to feed, a multi-strategy mycotoxin deactivation feed additive, good quality control and feed management, or are mycotoxins not an issue for you, or are you currently looking for a solution? So while you're voting, I'll take this back to you, Alex, with another question. Could you tell us the difference between the first two options that we see here?
Of course, in a simple way. So what's a binder? A binder is typically a bentonite or a clay that it's able to bind mycotoxin, especially aflatoxin. And the multi-strategy is more innovative solution containing different strategy to counteract different mycotoxin, not only afla, right?
Yeah. All right. Thank you. And with that, we're closing our voting, and results are coming in. Let's see what we have here. 38% of you use a mycotoxin binder added to feed. 38% of you, about the same number, are using a multi-strategy mycotoxin deactivation. About half of you use good quality control and feed management. For 7% of you, mycotoxins are not really an issue, while 16% of you are currently looking for a solution. So I think it looks like our third option here has a plurality. What do you think about that?
Well, we have two situations here. If you use a simple binding, even if you select a reliable binder, you have still only solved a part of the problem. So as you saw, the most common mycotoxin in our animal survey, for instance, are DON and FUM. And these mycotoxins cannot be bound properly. We need to add a couple more strategies to mycotoxin risk management to address this less bound mycotoxin, right?
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, of course, every farm is different, right? So depending on the results and the results that you get, a BIOMIN representative will be there to help tailor a mycotoxin solution that best fits your needs, right? But while we're on the subject, what are some of these other strategies in the multi-strategy approach? What does multi-strategy actually entail?
Good. I would like to explain a little bit about the MYCOFIX 5.0, the last generation. So as we know, the mycotoxins have different structures. That's why different strategies are needed for their counteraction. So MYCOFIX has three strategies: adsorption, biotransformation, and bioprotection. So with adsorption via bentonite, it's a proven solution. It's gone through the full process of EU authorization for the binding aflatoxins. So this means that the binding is also proven in real farm conditions. So then we have the biotransformation components contain FUMONISINS for degradation of FUMONISINS, BBSH for the breakdown of trichotoxins, and the MTV components are responsible for counteracting zearalenone and ochratoxin. On top of this, MYCOFIX contain bioprotection components to help and protect the liver and any immune system from the effect of mycotoxins.
You know, there are a lot of products out there. What is it that sets MYCOFIX apart?
Yeah, this is an important point. Yeah, it's important to mention that BIOMIN is the first and only company with EU authorization for 5 ingredients to deactivate mycotoxin. Since 2013 and 2014, we have the registration for the bentonite for all animal species, the BBSH, and the purified enzyme FUMONISINS for pigs. And in 2017, we got the registration for BBSH and FUMONISINS for all avian species. Part of achieving the EU authorization for the biotransformational aspects was proving that the approach are effective at degrading the target mycotoxin, and that they are degraded into non-toxic metabolites. So BIOMIN leads this technology worldwide. thanks to a true commitment to research and development.
Well, tell me more about the science behind how MYCOFIX actually works.
Yeah. This is important point. To achieve this registration, there are a lot of requirements to be met. For example, you have to run several trials to prove that the safety and the efficacy of the products. So BIOMIN has cooperates with leading universities from all around the world, and as you can see here, there are several peer-reviewed papers published in this field, as it is required to prove the efficacy on the product not only in vitro but also in vivo.
What is the correct inclusion rate of MYCOFIX in diets in order to achieve a sufficient level of protection?
The inclusion rate depends on different facts. First of all, you have to consider the contamination levels as well as the mycotoxins which are occurring in your diet. So it also depends on the production stage and on the animal species. But you can always contact a sales or a technical representative from BIOMIN, and they will help you with your needs and help you to find the right solution for your farm.
Great. And something else that can help you is, of course, the MYCOFIX app. This is available in the Apple App Store and in the Google Play Store. The MYCOFIX app helps you stay up to date on mycotoxins, including regular updates on survey data. And with that, I'm happy to say we come to your questions. We have a lot to choose from, not only from the questions that have come in during this webinar, but also from when many of you registered. So thank you for all of your questions, and to our fantastic team here, I've picked out a few for us to answer. The first one goes to you, Martina. Let's see here. Yes, how does LC-MS-MS compare to other testing methods, such as ELISAs or test strips?
Yeah, this is a question that we get very often.
I'll bet.
Yeah, there is one important concept to remember when trying to compare different testing methods. There is no absolute best method. There are only methods that are fit for purpose or not. So the testing method that should be chosen is simply the one that best fits one's necessities. For a best screening, for example, at the grain collection point, the best method will be a rapid one, like strips or ELISAs. For a multi-mycotoxin analysis that includes regulated and emerging mycotoxins, the best method will be an LC-MS-MS analysis.
That's right. There's a lot to consider, right?
Exactly.
You have to consider how fast you need a result, how much throughput you have, where you're testing, what your flexibility is. Yeah. Great. Thank you. The next one goes then to Alex. It reads, what is the trend of mycotoxin contamination for the next few years? So what does your crystal ball tell you?
Good point. As we saw in the result of our survey, the tendency is to continue to see a high prevalence and contamination by mycotoxins produced on the field, right? Mycotoxins such aflatoxin may show up again, as we haven't seen in some regions such as Asia, but irregularly or sporadically. So another important point is also FUMONISINS are starting to appear more in cooler regions like Northern Europe. So the great challenge actually comes from the field, definitely, and due to change in climate and agricultural practices that created the environment for the mycotoxin production.
Right. I think of the example you showed with Argentina.
Yes, for sure.
With how the two very different climate situations from 2007 2018 have impacted mycotoxins.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, thank you. This next one goes back to you, Martina. It seems like we've hit on a popular topic with LC-MS-MS. The question is, how do you take a sample for LC-MS-MS analysis?
Oh, well, the sampling procedure is just like for any other mycotoxin analysis. So also here, it is of crucial importance that the sample is representative. And this is because, as we know, mycotoxin distribution in grains is typically uneven. So a good rule that applies also in this case is to collect incremental samples as described by the sampling guidelines in place in your respective country. And the detailed steps are also described in our sampling guide that will be provided to the participants afterwards.
That's right. It's a tricky thing, isn't it? Because
Yes.
you have in a shipment of grain or feed, you might have sort of hot spots.
That's
right?
exactly how they're called. Yeah, the hotspots for
Mhm.
mycotoxin production.
Okay. Great. The next question goes to you, Alex.
Good.
I'm finding contamination from multiple mycotoxins in my feed, but the levels are low. Should I still be worried? What do you say to that?
Good question. Good question. Yeah, mycotoxins have different effects on the various organs and on animal productivity and health, for sure. But currently we have a result from several studies showing the impact on the different mycotoxins, especially on the gut and immune system. And especially again in low mycotoxin contamination. So we know that if these systems are not working well, they can open the door to several diseases. So almost always we concentrate our effort in investment to control this disease or low production parameters without considering that mycotoxin can be present and contribute to these losses. So it's important to keep in mind that mycotoxin can affect more than one system, right?
Okay, yeah, like the gut or the immune system or the liver
Yeah,
or the kidneys. Yeah. Great. Thank you. And this question goes back to you now, Martina. Can you give us a concrete example of synergistic effects between mycotoxins?
Okay, so let's take, for example, FUMONISIN B1 and DEOXYNIVALENOL. The effects of the co-occurrence of these two fusarium toxins have been investigated in chickens, but you cannot predict the toxic effects that will be observed when two or more mycotoxins are present in the same diet just by knowing the single toxic effects of these mycotoxins. So studies need to be performed. And it was found in this case that chickens fed with diets containing both FUMONISIN B1 and DEOXYNIVALENOL had lower weight gain and decreased efficiency of feed utilization. There was also a significant synergistic interaction between FUMONISIN B1 and DON regarding cholesterol level in the blood and serum activity of several enzymes, which is a biomarker for liver injuries or liver damage.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. This question, and if I'm not mistaken, this will be our last question. Yes, it is. This is going to go to you, Alex. Good. What should I consider to choose a good anti-mycotoxin product? That's a big question.
Yeah, big question and frequent question. So the most widely applied method to protect animals against mycotoxins is to use a synthetic or natural adsorbent. So these minerals are used in animal production to control especially aflatoxin. Yeah. However, they are not very effective against mycotoxin with complex structures because they are not too big to fit in between the layers, right, of this product. So alternative proven way to overcome the problem of low efficacy in the absorption of some mycotoxin is the specific enzyme biotransformation. Yeah, it is possible to use a specific enzyme that irreversibly degrade mycotoxin as FUM, DON, ZEN, occutoxin, etc., and non-toxic toxic metabolites. So innovating and using absorption and biotransformation, the MYCOFIX line provides the best protection against mycotoxin available on the market, right?
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you.
Welcome.
That closes our Q&A session. Thank you to all participants out there, everyone in the audience who cared enough to send us a question. We really appreciate it. And with that, we're actually coming now to the end of our webinar. As promised, you'll be getting a few goodies from us. You'll receive an email including links to today's recording, the brand new BIOMIN Mycotoxin Survey Annual Report, a Romer Labs mycotoxin sampling guide, and a link to a short on-site mycotoxin testing video. All this you'll get from us within the next 24 hours, so make sure you check your inbox. You'll also be prompted to answer a short survey on today's webinar. It should take about 2 minutes to complete. So by providing your feedback, you allow us to improve our webinar program, and you also help us identify possible future topics for discussion. We appreciate your taking the time to complete the survey. So just it remains for me now to thank our speakers. Thank you, Alexandro Marchioro from BIOMIN.
Thank you very much for the attention and patience.
Always, it was a pleasure.
Yeah.
And thank you very much to Martina Bellasio from Romer Labs.
Thank you for this opportunity.
This is Joshua Davis from Romer Labs saying visit us at biomin.net or romerlabs.com to learn more about how we can help you develop a mycotoxin detection and management strategy tailored to your needs. Thank you for your interest and your attention, and have a great day.